I'm Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv, where the region and the world are marking 1 year since Hamas terrorists launched that deadly attack, killing 1,200, the deadliest attack in Israel's history. The expanding war showing no signs of stopping as tensions rise across the Middle East. October 7th, 1 year later, starts right now.
This is an ABC News Live special today. 1 year since the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. The horrific early morning Hamas terror attack. Militants going door to door. A massacre playing out at a music festival. Hostages taken into underground tunnels. Now, Gaza in ruins. Tens of thousands of Palestinians dead. The region on the brink of a wider conflict. And families still separated. Our team across the region, October 7th, 1 year later, starts right now.
Hello from Tel Aviv. I'm Matt Gutman. 1 year ago today, Hamas terrorists launched that devastating terrorist attack on Israel, killing more than 1,200 people. And now Israel is involved in multiple conflicts across the Middle East, triggered by Hamas's rampage. Those conflicts are now escalating. October 7th, 2023, thousands of rockets streaking over southern and central Israel, targeting major cities. Harrowing video showing Hamas militants carrying out mass abductions at the Nova Music Festival near the Gaza border, a festival meant to celebrate love and unity. At 6:30 a.m. today, hundreds gathered at the site to mark the moment the massacre started there. By the end of that dark Saturday, 1,200 people were dead, about 250 kidnapped into Gaza. Today, about 100 remain in captivity, about 50 believed to still be alive. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu immediately declaring war on Hamas, launching airstrikes on Gaza ahead of a ground offensive there. A short-lived ceasefire last November, eventually allowing for the return of 80 hostages. But the fighting resumed. Negotiations for another pause have broken down time and again, despite President Biden saying a deal was right around the corner. Israel has faced backlash for the mass destruction in Gaza that you see in these before and after satellite images. The Hamas-run health ministry reports more than 41,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began. Now Israel is at war on multiple fronts with no let-up in its campaign in Gaza and intensifying attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now the region bracing for a possible Israeli retaliatory strike on Iran. We have full team coverage today across the region with live reporting from the Israel-Gaza border and the White House. But we begin with the families of hostages fighting for their return. Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz went back to kibbutz Kfar Aza with the older brother of twins who were taken hostage there and are still being held captive in Gaza.
The moment you enter this ravaged kibbutz, your heart sinks once again. The images are stark, the silence jarring. This now abandoned community was once bursting with life and activity, home to some 800 people, families, children. But on October 7th, Hamas militants penetrated fences, swooped in on paragliders, and terrorized this community, murdering some 60 residents here and taking 19 hostage. This row of houses where the young adults lived, now a brutal reminder of the horrors of that day. And throughout the kibbutz, another reminder, the faces of the hostages still held by Hamas. This is the gate where the Hamas terrorists entered into the kibbutz, and also likely the gate where they took the kidnapped hostages into Gaza, which you can see just about a mile away. Two of the hostages, twin brothers, the life of their large family, Gali and Ziv Berman. Today, their older brother, Laron, visits the kibbutz often to feel their presence.
This is Ziv's room.
Ziv's home.
Ziv's one of my brothers. And on the other end, this is Gali's room.
Gali kidnapped with a neighbor, Emily Demori, after he ran to help her when the terrorists stormed the kibbutz. And Ziv?
As you can see, they burned the outside of his room and enter all the smoke inside to drove him out.
The twins' parents lived elsewhere on the kibbutz and survived, but waited with Liran 11 days after the massacre to find out what happened to Gali and Ziv. You had to think they might have been dead.
Yes. We waited for the announcement that we had to bury my two little brothers. And when the officers came to us and told us that they are kidnapped, it was now a year into this. It sounds unreal when I'm saying it, but it was one of the happiest days of my life. That we had hope, we had optimism.
But a year later, Liran has moments of doubt after seeing the condition of released hostages and the news of the 6 executed last month.
I'm not thinking it out loud, but I'm thinking to myself if it was the better out of the two options. But back then it was the better out of the two options. We didn't have to bury my two little brothers, and they are still alive to this day.
Liran's own life, now with a single purpose.
I think this is my life mission. I never done something as important as this. It is a roller coaster of emotion. We don't have good days, we have okay days. But mostly it's like I'm keeping focus on the mission, and the mission is the return of my brothers and all the other hostages.
A mission that gets harder every day this war continues.
And Martha Raddatz joins us now along with foreign correspondent James Longman. Martha, what was it like going back to that kibbutz?
Well, I think, Matt, you, of course, have been there as well, and after a year, and it is profound. It is somber, and you think of what happened there the year before. Of course, the Israelis want you to remember. They want everybody to remember exactly what happened. I mean, things are absolutely untouched there. They want people to see the horrors of that day. I mean, walking through Ziv and Gali's homes and seeing the bullet holes and the fire that burned them out of their homes, and seeing Emily's home across the way and knowing that she called for help and called Gali, can you come over? And he ran over to help her, and then they were both taken away by Hamas militants. It is incredibly profound, and I was struck by the silence. You can hear birds and you can hear insects chirping, and that is about it. And so it really does bring you back to that day. And knowing that you are a mile away from Gaza, one of the things Liran told me is it's so... He likes looking across that mile and knowing how close his brothers are, just about a mile away from him. Right now, he hopes they're still alive a mile away.
Thank you, Martha. And we were there today, and you probably noticed it as well. You can still hear the booms across the way in Gaza from Israeli airstrikes and artillery hitting. The sound of fighting still so present there. James, I want to turn to you. Hostage families like the Bermans have been pressing the Israeli government to do more to free their loved ones. Now, how much pressure is Netanyahu under right now to bring those hostages home?
Matt, he's under huge amounts of pressure. It's just a question of how susceptible he is to that pressure. And, you know, you and I have met plenty of these hostage families. They are extraordinary people. And they say very openly that if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have been an initial deal. They wouldn't have got those 80 hostages out. And they absolutely feel that at the very beginning of all this, that Benjamin Netanyahu and his government were hell-bent on a response, a military response. And they were the ones to stop that from happening, or at least to temper the Netanyahu government and allow them to think about getting the hostages out at the same time. It's also important to say that many of these hostages, their families, they come from areas of Israel which are not you know, naturally supportive of Benjamin Netanyahu or his government. I mean, some of these kibbutzim full of peace activists, people who feel very passionately about a two-state solution. These young people at the Nova Music Festival, many of them from Tel Aviv, they were out protesting the Netanyahu government for months. I watched them. I was in watching these protests for ABC in the months up until October 7th against the judicial reforms that he wanted to pass. So these are not natural allies of his, people he doesn't necessarily have to listen to. I think now, with multiple wars, multiple fronts opening up, the pressure, I think, probably on him for a deal for the hostages has lessened somewhat. Matt?
And Martha, thank you, James. Martha, now the U.S. is trying to contain this expanding conflict, and I spoke with the U.S. ambassador to Israel on Sunday about how the U.S. is communicating with Israeli officials about a potential response to Iran's recent attack. Take a listen.
The president has been very clear that our goal is to avoid regional war. He's also been very clear that Israel has a right to defend itself. And I think the back and forth between those two positions, which have to coexist in our view, is one that helps shape how they think about their choices.
The ambassador says the U.S. has made it clear to Israel that it should not attack Iranian nuclear sites or its oil installation. So, Martha, to what degree is this administration actually able to influence Israel's Iran retaliation?
Well, Ambassador Liu, as you saw, is very diplomatic in that answer, talking about that kind of fine line between defending Israel and supporting Israel defending itself, and going after Hezbollah, going after Iran. They have tried to temper the response. They have tried and are constantly trying to get Israel to have a modest response, nothing that will significantly elevate this war. Matt.
Martha Raddatz and James Longman, thank you. Israel is now engaged in conflicts with Iranian proxies on 6 fronts. A short time ago, we interviewed the IDF's chief spokesman, Daniel Hagari, and what lessons he says they've learned since October 7th. I think there's been a lot of criticism about the ferocity of those attacks day after day for a couple of weeks now.
It needs to be explained. We are attacking Hezbollah. We're not attacking the Lebanese. We're not attacking the state of Lebanon. We're attacking Hezbollah. Now, I want to talk about Beirut. There is Beirut, and there is the Dahia.
Which is southern Beirut, you're saying, and is different from the main part of Beirut?
It's a Hezbollah land, different from the main of Beirut, and we are, even in the Dahia, we make sure that before each and every attack of us, we call the people to evacuate from those buildings that Hezbollah had put underneath them strategic missiles. Our act now is days or weeks. I do not know how now to mention the date, but the world needs to make sure that conditions are being prepared so we can see that Hezbollah was pushed back from the border.
So you're saying that even if there is an agreement, if you see that Hezbollah comes back, Israel will continue to push into southern Lebanon or do what it needs to in order to ensure that Hezbollah is not on the border next to those Israeli towns?
Exactly. We are not the same country of the 6th of October. Not in the south, not in the north. There will be no Hezbollah structures, rockets, tunnels next to a border that they could do a 7th of October. No, no more, never again.
You mentioned that it was the failure. When I spoke with General Doron Almog earlier, he said it was hubris and arrogance that led Israel to have this concept that was wrong and to misread the intelligence that was there. How do you prevent that from happening again?
I think we're doing it now. And we're mainly doing the lesson learning during the war. And it's a long war. And we're in multi-front war. And we've seen it here in the south in Gaza, and we saw it also in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Hezbollah started on the 8th of October attacking Israel.
I think that's one of the things that has become clear, is that healing and the conflict. And that shows how deep the wound is originally.
Very deep. The wound is very deep. It will take time, years, to heal. This is a massacre that, it's like a black hole. It's something that It's unexplainable. The 7th of October is like a black hole. It will take years to understand it. It's something that you cannot achieve with your mind. It's a wound. A deep wound will take time to heal.
And you hear that much harder line from the IDF. And the past year has put the relationship between the U.S. and the United States under significant constraints. So President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have seemed to clash at times over the U.S. supply of weapons to Israel, incursions into Gaza, and also the terms of a new ceasefire, which never materialized. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce joins me now. And Mary, Netanyahu has seemed to openly defy President Biden multiple times over the past year. Is the U.S. losing influence over its key ally?
It certainly is a critical question. Look, this White House, the president has certainly found ways to make its viewpoint known, but ultimately, Israel is the decision maker here. We have seen, of course, the president stand firmly behind Israel and its right to defend itself, but we have also seen a real evolution in the messaging that has come from this White House over the last year, increasingly urging Netanyahu to de-escalate the situation, to do more, to address the horrific humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And yes, while the White House would say their warnings and pressure have had an impact, especially on the delivery of much-needed aid and supplies to Gaza. Yet here we are with, as you said, no ceasefire, the situation only escalating, and it has put a real strain, no question, on the relationship between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Matt.
Mary Bruce, thank you. Countries around the world have been critical of Israel's year-long military operation in Gaza. And most recently, Germany stopped approving war weapons exports. And French President Emmanuel Macron, and you just heard some booms behind me because of those rockets going off and the interceptors intercepting them. We have not heard sirens. So I think the all clear has sounded here, despite the continued booms above us. We'll continue. French President Macron has called for a halt on arms deliveries to Israel, prompting a sharp response from Israel's prime minister. I want to bring ABC News foreign correspondent James Longman back with us again for more on how the international response has been to this war. James, how has the international community reaction been to Israel's actions in Gaza over the past year?
I think Matt has been on a bit of a journey. Initially, there was real heartache, heartbreak at what we saw on October 7th. The international community really an outpouring of solidarity with Israel. But I think that was tempered by a sense of dread at what Israel would do, what the response would be. And I think the nightmare of the international community over the last few months has come true, which is the death of tens of thousands of Palestinians. And look, I think it's really important to say the way that the United States views this war, the way that Israel views the situation and the way the rest of the world sees it are two very, very different things. And those divisions have only been more pronounced over the last year. If you just look at Europe, a number of countries over the last few months have formally recognized the state of Palestine. That is in direct reaction to what they've been seeing in Gaza. Countries all across the rest of the world similarly sympathizing with the Palestinians, and reputationally, Israel really has suffered. Matt?
And James, we've seen those protests erupting around the world against the war in Gaza, including here in the U.S. Now, we've seen many in college campuses. The protests come as the Anti-Defamation League says it's seeing a record number of anti-Semitic incidents this year in the U.S. What can you tell us about the rhetoric surrounding the war?
Yeah, look, these protests throw up a really interesting dynamic, which is the intergenerational divide now on this issue. So many young people feel very enthused about this issue. Many, many young people, majority even in the United States, now would say that they sympathize with the Palestinians. And that's because they have access to so much more information now. Social media is telling them what they want to hear in many cases without what they would believe is the censor of legacy media, if you like. But also social media, we know it can be kind of a toxic place as well, full of half-truths and mistruths and, of course, anti-Semitism. So we've seen that combination, the internationalization of this conflict, that combination of people feeling very strongly that they want to come out to support the principles of democracy, supporting human rights, the right of self-determination of the Palestinians, but at the same time, deeply worrying anti-Semitic tropes and Jewish people and communities around the world feeling like they're in danger like never before. Matt?
James Longman, thank you. Now, coming up, the race to survive as Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel by air, land, and sea. The harrowing stories of horror and heroism from the people who lived through October 7th. After this.
How many elephants have you killed? True natural beauty, one of the last of its kind. But this comes at a cost. 5 countries, 5 incredible real stories of adventure, danger,
We have to go.
and deceit. Where are we going next? We got this ongoing search for the animal we've been trying to find. These are the last lands. The national parks around the world that have to be saved.
Nightline, the stories that shape your world, that shape your life. Dramatic, stunning, empowering, jaw-dropping. The most powerful stories of our time. Nightline, on right after Kimmel and streaming on Hulu.
Yo, partner.
We're not partners. I'm the detective and you are the consultant. I see you brought your baby to a crime scene.
She is just spectating.
You're a single mom with 3 kids pretending to be a cop.
I am not pretending. I spot things that detectives miss. Still think my theory's flimsy?
That big brain of hers is going to help us close a lot of cases.
I'm just out here super copping.
High Potential, all new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories. Start here.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Make it your daily first listen, wherever you get your podcasts.
The Blind Side. It was a story tailor-made for Hollywood. A wealthy white family taking in a black teenager.
Michael Orr filing a lawsuit saying it was far from the truth.
Tsui is contesting his suit.
When you watch that film back, it's a little cringy, and in some cases, wasn't true at all.
Inside the real story of how Super Bowl champion Michael Orr became involved with the multimillionaire Tsui family. Who will come out on top?
Behind the Blind Side, now streaming on Hulu. What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
We are part of an operation.
Is this our combat operations center?
We're approaching the gate. Militants came in from...
Hi, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ismail? David.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
With the president in Rehoboth Beach, I'm Phil Lipoff. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
And welcome back to this ABC News Live on this October 7th. It's been exactly 1 year since Hamas rampaged into the communities or kibbutzim close to the border with Gaza in the deadliest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. ABC News' Ines de la Cuetara is live in Kfar Aza right now. Ines, what is it like being there 1 year later right now?
Hey, Matt. Yeah, so we are here in Kfar Aza, one of the hardest hit areas in southern Israel. This whole row of homes were completely destroyed on the day, and they've been left as is for people to remember what happened on that horrific day. You can see outside some of the homes, they've set up posters with the names of people who lived here. So in this case, Sivan Elkebetz and Noor Hasidim, a couple that lived here that was brutally murdered. You can see the bullet marks here on the door, the shrapnel marks on the wall. 64 residents were killed here. 5 remain in Gaza to this day. And of the roughly 800 residents who did survive the attack, just 34 residents have returned to this kibbutz a year later. Many of them say they would love to be able to return to rebuild, but they just don't feel safe doing so at this point. And Matt, as we've been here throughout the evening, we have been hearing the sound of outgoing shelling over in Gaza, less than a mile away. Matt?
Those communities frozen in time. Ines de la Cuetara in Kfar Aza, thank you. And for those caught in the middle of October 7th, some fought to survive, others raced through a hellscape and risked their own lives to save what mattered most to them. Here's part of our ABC News Live special airing tonight, October 7th, The Race to Survive.
We woke up Saturday, October 7th, very early in the morning, my wife and I, and we went to swim in the sea. Regular Shabbat morning, we heard the sirens.
Explosion, rockets.
When I came to my car, 7:15 in the morning, I opened my cellular phone and then I got a text from my son, Amir, dead. There are terrorists inside kibbutz Nahal Oz. I served 35 years in the military. Something in my heart basically told me, Noam, you have to go there.
I called my sister who lived in Shujaiya neighborhood, which is the eastern part of Gaza Strip. It's near the Israeli borders. She told me, Hanin, I saw hostages. I told her, are you serious?
The town of Shujaiya in Gaza is just yards from Nahal Oz, where Noam and Gali's son, Amir, was living with his family.
My son is in danger.
You see a message that no parent ever wants to see. There are terrorists outside my door. What do you do next?
We drive home fast. I see Noam is taking his gun, his pistol. And I say, Noam, if you take your pistol, you'll need your both hands. I'll drive for you. And we go as fast as we can. We are almost the only vehicle on the road. We get another text message says there are terrorists in our neighborhood. So it's getting worse.
It's only minutes into the attack. But in Gaza, veteran ABC News producer Sami Ziara can predict what's coming.
I believe that's going to be war for 100%. No doubt about that.
We saw a police car blocking the whole road and a white pickup.
Yo!
Later, I'll learn it's a Toyota with terrorists.
Policemen are shooting from both sides of the car against this pickup. The bullets are coming to us. Suddenly, a young couple jump from the bushes wearing party clothes, which is unusual in this situation.
And they're barefoot. And they said, help us. We open the doors, the back doors, and they get inside, and they're very, very afraid.
What happened? And they, they were shaking. We said we were in a party. Many terrorists came. They slaughtered everybody.
The party was the Nova Festival.
One of my cousins from my dad's side is actually one of the producers of the Nova Festival. 7 of us from my family decided to go to the Nova Festival. I was gonna bring my son, Raphael. My mom said, you know what, just leave him with us, it's already late. We ended up leaving him, thank God. Thousands of beautiful young people, and everyone just welcomed us in. Strangers, they walked up to my dad. That was just my dad. He was like a magnet to everyone, male, female, children, older people, like everyone loved him. There's good, like almost too good to be true energy. And I saw that like the sun was about to rise. We have videos of all of us dancing. It was really fun. And then I look up and I tell my dad, I'm like, wow, look, they're fireworks. My dad turned around, and then my husband and my dad both look at me, and they're pale as pale can be. And then, like, I understood that they weren't fireworks. He ran to the car, and I'm sending messages in the family group chat that there's rockets, that I'm probably not going to be home soon, and I'm telling my mom to take care of my son. After like 8 minutes, my dad sees a bomb shelter and he stops the car. And I was really upset. And I was trying to grab the keys out of his hands.
You wanted to keep going.
I was telling him, what are the possibilities that a rocket is gonna... If a rocket needs to fall on top of our car and we're supposed to die, fine. But, like, what are you scared of? And he wasn't having it. And he told me to get inside the bomb shelter. And then I started getting text messages from my sister in Los Angeles. She's telling me, Danielle, there's a war. There's terrorists flooded the streets of Israel. Don't leave where you are. I couldn't feel my body. I'm just in complete shock.
You don't leave anyone behind you. It's not a hard decision.
Gali and Noam ended up taking the couple that were at the Nova Festival to a safer place.
And Gali and I didn't talk too much. We just said, okay, let's rescue them.
So for this moment, your son had to take the back seat to these two people who are actually in your back seat, and you had to drive them out of harm's way.
Yes, we drove them where we saw a police car, and we said, call your family, tell them to come and take you home. And then we decided to go on a different road.
Driving back towards the death zone.
I was combat all my life. I saw many bodies. This was, part of my profession. I never saw something like this in my lifetime. So many, many, many cars on the ditches, and it's all full of bodies. Bodies of young people, women, couples, inside the car. Burning cars, bodies, bodies, bodies. Crazy.
Part 2 will focus on the trials Palestinians in Gaza have endured since October 7th. That's coming up in just a few minutes. Over the past year, hundreds of thousands of Israelis have pushed to no avail for their government to enter a ceasefire deal that would bring home the remaining hostages held by Hamas. They've used the so-called Hostage Square in Tel Aviv as a rallying point, and that's where we find WABC's Josh Einiger. Josh, how are people marking this day in Hostage Square?
Matt, good evening from just not that far from you. And, you could see there are a few people. There have been maybe a few dozen people here over the last hour or so. It's pretty late at night. A guy with a guitar. There's a piano back there. They were singing and just being together. This is a very solemn and somber night, pretty low key, as people are just trying to make sense of the year that has been and what's coming up, perhaps their way in the next year. There was supposed to be a massive event tonight to commemorate this solemn, occasion, this 1 year since October 7th. But because of the barrage of missiles that streaked in here last week from Iran, the government curtailed the number of people who could congregate outside. And so that event was essentially canceled for the public. So people ended up making their way here tonight. Matt.
And Josh, there was just another barrage of those rockets. As this morning, you were at that emotional memorial at the site of the Nova Music Festival where the attacks began a year ago. What was it like being there?
It was just sort of utterly emotional and really just draining to watch these poor family members. I mean, it's been a year, Matt, and they're still not able to understand things that are truly incomprehensible. The grotesque slaughter of their family members as they were just trying to dance. Yet we talked to one woman who hid in a dumpster for 4.5 hours, but the garbage they were standing on made noise. That attracted the attention, it attracted gunfire, and 9 people died in that spot, Matt.
WABC's Josh Einiger, thank you. Now we move on as 1 year from the attack, we're learning more every day about what survivors and their families are doing to return to any sense of normalcy in their lives. As a hostage in Gaza, Aviva Siegel found herself begging for her life, but now she finds herself begging for her husband to be set free from the clutches of the terrorists. And I spoke with Aviva earlier today, and this is what she had to say. What were your parting words to Keith when you realized that you were going to be released and that he was being forced to stay?
You know, I feel very lucky by saying what I did say, because I looked at him, and I think that what brought me saying that, what I said, is the sadness in his eyes. Because we were separated at that time. I was in one room and Keith was in a different room. And when I came into the room, first of all, the terrorists didn't even let me go say goodbye. I just moved him with my hand and I said, I'm going to Keith. And I found him looking at the ceiling, lying down on a filthy, dirty mattress, just like we did all the time, and looking at the ceiling, and he looked so sad. So I bent down, and that was just like 10 minutes because we just arrived to a new place. Until then, we were together. So it was the sadness of being separated from me. And I looked at him in the eyes, and I said, Keith, you be strong for me, and I'll be strong for you. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I just hope that that sentence is in his head like all the time, that he needs to be strong. And it's keeping me strong too. I'll be strong for him.
And I guess you didn't need to say that you love him, because if he knows anything, it's that.
Yeah, for sure. I was in a shock. He came to tell me that you tomorrow Israel 2 seconds before. I didn't know where they're taking me. If they're going to kill me, if they're going to take me, and I'll never ever see Keith.
And you had no exposure to the news, so you didn't know that there was a ceasefire. You didn't know that there was a hostage deal.
Not at all. Not at all. And I didn't allow myself to think about good things at all. The only thing that I did all the time is to prepare myself for worse things, all the time. I used to say to myself, you're going to go through worse, you're going to go through worse, and that's how it was. And, you know, seeing the pictures of the people that I was with, and the hostages from Kibbutz Kfar Aza. Emily is Shir's best friend. I took care of Doron in the baby house. She was with me for a year. And Gali and Ziv. I just loved them. And it breaks my heart. It does. To think that they're there. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen if we'll ever get them back. And I do know that we're going to do everything we can to get them back alive.
Aviva telling me she'll dedicate the rest of her life to getting her husband Keith back. When we come back, the hope for a better future. We speak with Palestinians affected by this war and what life is like in Gaza now.
The case against Sean Combs might as well just be called the freak-offs.
Freak-offs, what prosecutors described as orgies.
Sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution.
The AK-47s, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil.
Diddy in court, pleading not guilty and denied bail.
Now, this Wednesday night on ABC, as Sean Combs faces 120 new sexual assault allegations. New reporting, new details inside the secret life of Diddy. Wednesday night on ABC. What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our combat operations center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions. Operational nuclear reactor. So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love this.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you. David, good to meet you.
Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
Watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
I did terrible things. I hurt a lot of people.
I know who you are. Ball is in the air.
He's special.
Yes, it's a touchdown.
What if God made me this way?
FX's American Sports Story. Aaron Hernandez. All new Tuesdays at 10 on FX. Stream on Hulu.
This version of me. America's #1 most-watched daytime talk show is ABC's The View.
You all heard it here first. I love it. I'm there for it.
Hot topics, political views.
That's what we're about.
Voices that matter. It all goes down right here.
That's why it's called The what? The View. I love it. I'm all in. Second that. This is going to be must-see TV. And so much could happen.
One great idea can change your life.
That's what Shark Tank does.
That's the American dream right there.
This calling is for my kids.
What you've done is remarkable.
I'm going to make you an offer.
One of the most innovative things I've seen in my life.
This could be our biggest deal ever.
Emmy-winning Shark Tank season premiere October 18th on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Welcome back to an ABC News Live special, October 7th, 1 year later. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says more than 41,000 people have been killed in Gaza in the year since Israel declared war on Hamas. The real death toll, though, may be much higher. The United Nations says at least 10,000 people are feared to be buried under the rubble. The World Health Organization reports no fully functioning hospitals are left inside Gaza, and aid agencies have said their medical staffs have been detained and have come under attack. Israel has targeted Gaza hospitals with airstrikes, claiming Hamas uses those hospitals to conduct terrorist activity. Now, Israel is fighting its war on multiple fronts, expanding its airstrikes in Lebanon. Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz joins me again now for more. Martha, now, the architect of the October 7th attack, Yahya Sinwar, is now the de facto leader of Hamas after a series of assassinations allegedly carried out by Israel on Hamas's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh. What can you tell us about who Sinwar is, what his goals are, and what is Israel doing to try to find him?
I think Israel is doing and has been doing everything possible to try and find him. In fact, he was sort of off the radar for a while, and there were questions on whether he had been killed, whether he had been disappeared, the longtime leader of Hamas. But he has resurfaced in some ways. I mean, you can imagine why he'd want to disappear, especially after the assassination of the leader, the Haniyeh, in Tehran, which was a remarkable feat carried out by the Israelis, assassinating him while he was in Tehran. But Sinwar, there are people who I talk to now who do not believe he wants any kind of ceasefire, who now believes he will just be killed by the Israelis, given what's happened to others. But I think every step of the way, in some way or another, he has blocked any future ceasefire, and that is a real frustration. Obviously, the Israelis haven't agreed to everything either, but Sinwar is a blocking point. Matt.
Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz, thank you. We continue now because for Palestinians in Gaza, the past year has been full of heartbreak and loss. Among the Palestinians we were able to speak with a student who's had to relocate 6 times during this war. What hope does she have for the future? Here's a preview of the second part of our ABC News Live special, October 7th, The Race to Survive.
In Gaza, the roars of the jets and the crashing of bombs has often drowned out the desperate cries for help.
Airstrikes above us, and they are close. We can hear them. Yes. These are one of the bombs.
The situation is very hard. No words can describe what we are living right now. Things are getting worse day by day.
In the first weeks of the war, 22-year-old Tala Herzala documented her life under siege for ABC News.
I have only one question. We as civilians, where are we supposed to go?
Talah's fight for survival began when Hamas terrorists brutally murdered 1,200 Israelis and kidnapped hundreds more on October 7th. For days, Israel was in chaos, the IDF still trying to clear southern towns of infiltrators.
As you can see, they do not have control of the situation right here. It's believed there are still militants lurking around.
Over the next year, the IDF pulverizing Gaza, while Hamas operated underneath civilian areas in its tunnels. The result was that roughly 2 million Gazans were displaced.
These are our bags that we packed. In 1 second, we decided to leave our house and to go to the nearest hospital. We're moving under the pump. They are bombing in my area. And so we went to the hospital, the nearest hospital.
We saw firsthand why Talah and about 2 million others had to evacuate.
This is where displaced people have been trying to get from North Gaza to the southern part of Gaza. You can see buses crossing it right now, and in the distance you can see a recent Israeli, what appears to be an airstrike over there, that column of smoke. Pretty much all the roads around us are obliterated, and many of the houses are too.
And most recently, we were in Rafah.
We've not actually been able to see a building that is not completely destroyed.
The IDF had taken us to see Hamas's vast network of tunnels.
The IDF says that it was built right under a mosque, and it went all the way to the Egyptian side, but at some point they say Hamas itself destroyed this tunnel.
But what struck most was the emptiness of the place.
In Tel Sultan neighborhood in Rafah, this devastation goes on as far as the eye can see, and the IDF says there's not a single civilian here.
The only living creature we saw, that emaciated dog. The IDF has ordered civilians to flee to what it calls safer zones or humanitarian enclaves. But for so many, they weren't safe. The IDF has killed over 40,000 people in Gaza, tens of thousands wounded. Leon was badly wounded during a strike at a refugee camp where she and her family had sought shelter.
أنا عادي كنت ماشية في المدرسة فكنت بدي أدخل الخيمة عادي أدخل الخيمة فجأة ما كان في أي إنذار أو ما حكوا للمدرسة أصلاً إذا في شيء أو لا فجأة وأنا واقفة على الباب الخيمة صار انفجار كبير لدرجة إن وقعت في الأرض ما حسيت إلا حالي في الأرض وغرقانة في الدم صراحة صحيت خفت كتير وحسيت قلبي وقف من كتر الخوف قشعرت من حالي كل دم وبركة تحتية كلها دم فكان بابا قدامي أول ما شافني هيك جرى علي وقاعد يقول لي إيش يا ليان صاحي قلت له بابا أنا كويس فيش فيه حاجة كان الكل قاعد بعيط وبصوت يعني عشان أنا كنت متصابة
ليان طفلة من قطاع غزة
That's her father by her side in the hospital.
مرقت المستشفى صحيت على مجموعة دكاترة حواليا وكل كانيولات ودم. شو اللي بيصير؟ حاسة من جوا عظم بتكسر من كتر وجع مش طبيعي، حاسة كل جسمي هيك مخضر هيك من الخبطة، من الوجع ومن
It took weeks for Leon and her mother to eventually make it out of Gaza to Egypt. They'd hoped doctors in Cairo could save her leg. They couldn't.
لقيتها هذا رجل هذا والتانية فيها صدمة من قوة الخبطة اللي صارت فيها صدمة عصبية.
You still feel the nerves.
أيوة، فما بقدر أقف عليها هذا التانية. أحيانا صح بحس إنه الرجل لسه موجودة، مش حاسة إنه هي مش موجودة.
And under immense security concerns, our team in Gaza was able to see what's left of Tala's life after a year of war.
You are deprived from everything, from quiet moments, from privacy.
Like many in Gaza, Tala's home was destroyed. Home for her is this small tent, a makeshift bed, and just a few belongings. Like so many in Gaza since the war began, they've had to relocate 6 times.
When you are ordered to move and to evacuate to another place, you will have to get used to water problems, electricity problems. Searching for water is a burden on all Gazans.
Loss comes in all forms in this war.
I lost 7 cousins with their families. I can't find pure happiness. Every happiness is mixed with something sad. I can remember when one of our relatives decided to get married in the war. I was looking at the bride and the groom, like finally something good is happening. Finally, I can see happy moments in my life. But the groom had a brother killed, and when they had this happy event, he remembered his brother. And so he started crying, and everyone started crying after him. Life is something unbearable.
And you can watch the entire special October 7th, The Race to Survive, tonight on ABC News Live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 p.m. Pacific. Now, this war has been especially deadly for journalists in Gaza. At least 128 have been killed, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. That's the most in any year since the committee began documenting these things in 1992. Veteran ABC producer Sami Ziara was just one of many faced with impossible decisions to make about his family.
The shelling is continuing. We film very strong picture. I'm trying to take the road going to the sea because I have to go back to Khan Younis because my family there. I don't want to be stuck in Gaza while I'm driving. I feel that the shelling is following me. I ask, do you think that they are trying to target us? We find the tank, it's coming around 300 meters after us. Open fire from heavy machine gun, but I need to pass. No choice. I'm not going to be stuck in Gaza, and my family, they are in the south.
It sounds like you made a decision that either you die on that road or you're separated from your family.
Absolutely.
But you were not going to be, you weren't willing to be separated.
Absolutely.
You were willing to die for him.
Yeah, I'm trying to protect him as much as I can, but to leave him in a place and I'm in a different place, it's not acceptable at all.
Sami has made it out of Gaza with his family. He is now in Egypt. When we come back, the threat of an all-out war in the Middle East, how escalating attacks are fueling fears, and what a diplomatic solution could look like after this.
Hey, good morning, America. Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Are you ready? They are ready.
covering the biggest events in the country right now.
There's a lot going on here this morning. You don't just see it, you feel it.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in too. I'll be here.
I am here and so happy.
I'm in.
I'm in too.
Michael, George, Claire,
Ginger.
Hi, my name is Patrice. I am a totally cool person with a disability. Patrice always sees the best side of life. I just looked at her and I said, would you like to be my wife?
If you get married and you're collecting a Social Security benefit, your benefit will be cut.
I don't take anything for granted.
I don't see what anyone can see in anyone.
They're never gonna stop us from loving each other.
3, 2, 1.
It's a 24/7 life together.
It's not about the fear or the risk. It's about the love of flying. 3, 2, 1.
I did terrible things. I hurt a lot of people.
I know who you are.
Ball is in the air! You're special.
Yes, it's a touchdown.
What if God made me this way?
FX's American Sports Story. Aaron Hernandez. All new Tuesdays at 10 on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Things have changed.
What does that mean?
It means everyone is vulnerable. I know for a fact there's something else at work here.
When you put blood on the ground, there's no going back from it.
FX is the old man. All new Thursdays at 10 on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. Hell descended on the Holy Land. Hamas seemed to have set in motion a regional conflict unimaginable a year ago. Hostages, starvation, missiles, destruction, and death. What are the possible paths forward? I want to bring in Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz again. Martha, President Biden came here almost exactly a year ago, just after October 7th, with some advice for Prime Minister Netanyahu. What was it?
Of course, this was before the Gaza war had really broken out, and President Biden said to Netanyahu, learn the lessons we did from our post-9/11 reaction. And what he meant by that is don't overreact. I know the emotions are heavy. You've lost all these people and you want revenge. But remember, don't make more enemies. And that is the message he carried then. And I think that is what also still drives the administration. They want this contained. They don't want this to escalate. They understand that Israel must defend itself. But they still are trying to convince the Israelis to remember the larger picture, to not make more enemies while they're defending themselves. Clearly, it is what we said at the beginning of this program, Matt, what you so eloquently said, that in talking to Ambassador Liu, which was we defend Israel's right to defend itself, but at the same time, don't let this war escalate, and that's what we're on the verge of right now, Matt.
Martha Raddatz, once again, thank you. And thank you for watching this ABC News Live special. October 7th, 1 year later, our team will be following every step of this widening war as long as it takes. And tune in to our ABC News Live special, October 7th, The Race to Survive, tonight at 8:30 Eastern, right here on ABC News Live. The news never stops, and neither do we, and we'll be back with more news after this.
When I flick this switch, there'll be a horrible noise and a terrible odor.
Will it hurt?
Pain like you've never known. Oh!